what exactly is the prototype? We see him in chapters 2, 3, and 4 and hear mentions of him in every single chapter, where he's either causing chaos in the factory or inspiring fear in the safe haven toys. But what is he? He seems to be some kind of cyborg looking thing, but what exactly does that mean? And I'm especially confused because in a report by Lockhart, we read that the prototype runs using tar somehow. Well, let's take everything that we know about Playtime Co. and the prototype to see if we can get a good estimate as to what the prototype really is. The first thing that we have to take into consideration is that Poppy and even some of the other toys called the prototype the original, which means he's the first of something, but it seems that Poppy was created before the prototype. So for him to be the absolute original doesn't make sense, but instead he would be the original for the Bigger Bodies initiative. But he's not like the rest of the toys, as the prototype doesn't even need food to eat, which is crazy, because if he's alive then he would need some form of fuel to keep going. Well, it's possible that because of the reports that Lockhart made after the incident with Theodore Graham Bell, the prototype might actually run using tar and or other things. But if he's running on tar, then where in the world could he be getting this? Wouldn't he be out of fuel by now? Well, there's actually an explanation for this, and it's possible that the prototype has his own unlimited fuel source. Poppy tells us that the prototype's home is in the labs, but does that mean that he sleeps there, or could it be something else? Well, it's possible that it is something else, because in the labs, or at least right outside of the labs, we see a giant garden of red poppy flowers being grown. And you might be wondering what this has to do with the prototype and the tar. Well, the poppy flowers that we see down here looks just like the opium poppy flower that we see in real life, which produces latex that can dry out into opium tar from its seed pod, which means that the prototype could be growing all of these flowers, not for the reason that Playtime Co. needed them, but in order to keep himself running. But is he a human, or is he just a robot? Because if he doesn't need food and just runs on tar, then you might begin to think that he might be a really advanced computer that lives in a metallic body. Well, it seems that he used to be a human at some point, as he has a digestive tract and even bones in his arm. And if Playtime Co. only wanted to create an advanced computer, then I don't see why you would need something with a digestive tract instead of just giving it electricity like you would to any other computer. And so this leads me to believe that the prototype was a human who was transferred into the body of the prototype. But if he was human, then who was he? Well, it's theorized that the prototype could be Elliot Ludwig. For example, we know that Elliot Ludwig is Poppy's dad, but if that's the case, then why does the prototype talk to Poppy as if he were her dad in the chapter 4 phone call?
I admit, though, I'm disappointed.
After all that time in your case, I'd hoped you'd see things differently.
Don't you understand?
It's always been about you
And we'll harm you. What we are. That's not a truth that can be burnt away. No, not when it can mean so much more.
Prototype. Please.
It's time to come home.
Poppy.
It's time to come home.
And why is he willing to kill everybody else but not Poppy? Well, it's possible that the prototype was Elliot Ludwig at one point. And in the same way that Poppy is able to live on forever, now Elliot Ludwig is able to live on forever. But he's definitely not like the other experiments who were transplanted into their new bodies, presumably by taking the human's brain and putting it into a toy. But he does seem to have some similarities with the other toys. happens, as in a chapter 2 tape we hear of an event where the prototype managed to take an alarm clock as well as other things in his room, make a laser pointer and shine it on a camera, disabling it, which eventually led to the death of an employee who went in to check on him. But also in that tape, the scientist says that further suppression treatments will need to be enacted in order to make sure that other experiments don't become as intelligent or violent as the prototype, who is literally the most dangerous toy they have.
The prototype seems to possess an unprecedented level of intelligence, beyond that of all other test subjects, as well as an alarming willingness to commit violence. Further suppression treatments will need to be enacted to ensure that no other experiments develop these qualities.
However, we also hear the exact same scientist make a tape during the Hour of Joy, where he says that the events of the Hour of Joy are in no doubt relation to the prototype, who possesses qualities of both coordination and cooperation.
Final log. In relation, experiment 1006, the prototype. Coordination and cooperation is evidently within his skill set, as well as the skill set of all other experiments of his type. Though still missing, today's events are no doubt in relation to him. His absence was a flaw in the scientific process, which should have under no circumstances been left unaccounted for.
And since it's a scientist who's making both of these tapes in relation to the prototype, it leads me to believe that he isn't just a computer, but a real living thing. Because why in the world would a scientist be involved with advanced computers? So it seems that the prototype, although different from the rest of the toys, might have a similar anatomy to them. Because if he was the prototype for the Bigger Bodies initiative, then obviously some things must be the same with him and other toys. And in my opinion, the similarities seem to be the fact that they made a body for him and took his brain, which led to him now controlling the body that they gave him. However, it's possible that the human that they used was insanely intelligent, or because of the transplant process, something could have happened in the person's brain, giving them some form of savant syndrome, making them insanely intelligent at the expense of their humanity. But because it seems that the toys keep their memories after their transplant, then could the prototype really be Elliot Ludwig? The prototype is the one who is responsible for the Hour of Joy, so why would Elliot have everyone in his own company killed? Well, it's possible that Elliot Ludwig didn't want to be the prototype. In the same way that Sawyer was made an experiment against his own will, it's possible that something could have happened to Elliot Ludwig where the others also decided to turn him into an experiment in order to make sure that he wouldn't cause any further damage at the company, which would then explain his hatred for the scientists and the company as a whole. And since we hear that Elliot Ludwig was keeping a dead child's remains on his property in one of the chapter 3 radios, then I'm starting to think that Elliot was too reckless in the same way that Sawyer was too reckless, which led to both of them being turned into experiments.
Tragic news this morning. As of 9:45 a.m., local authorities report that the body of a young boy has been found on the estate of the late Elliot Ludwig, an esteemed toy maker and originator of the Playtime company. Found in an upstairs bedroom in a large duffel bag, officers on scene report that the remains appear to have been disturbed. Organs as well as key bones from the skeletal structure were reported missing from the body. It is unknown at this time whether this extraction was, in fact, the cause of death. Despite Playtime's proclamation of Ludwig's innocence, many believe his reclusive and mysterious nature displayed over the previous decades lends suspicion to this claim. When questioned, Ludwig's neighbors indicated that he would often return to his home in strange hours of the night and depart again before sunrise.
Which means that the prototype could at one point have been Elliot Ludwig, who was then forced to be in a half mechanical, half biological body and forced to stay in the factory for the rest of his life. But what do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and click on this video right here.